Welcome back to World Studies. We are now going through the second half of World War I. Last thing we talked about was the use of trench warfare. Got to recognize that was a very efficient method for the time of defending yourself. But of course, wars are meant to be won with offense, not defense. And so it proved to be very elusive for either side to win the war. One other thing I want to comment on before we get into the notes, I want to clarify or make sure you guys are aware that this is World War I. It is not World War II. Many people confuse the two wars. They only think of World War II, which includes Adolf Hitler, the Nazis, the Holocaust. That's World War II. World War I still involves the Allies versus Germany and their allies, but different sides. It was the Allies and Central Powers in World War I. So just hopefully, I'm assuming most of you guys already knew that, but just in case there was someone out there wondering, when am I going to talk about Hitler? Not yet. Save it for another day. But let's continue. We're at letter C, industrialism and innovation. What was World War I like? Well, new weapons made war even deadlier. In a 4-month span, Britain, for example, had lost nearly as many men as the U.S. had lost in 4 years during the Civil War. It was a deadly war, the deadliest war in history up to that point. Machine guns and flamethrowers were used during this war. Machine guns could fire hundreds of bullets per minute. A small, well-armed force could slaughter thousands of enemy troops. Flamethrowers sprayed a deadly stream of burning liquid into trenches and foxholes. Both these weapons were used extensively during the war. Poison gas. This new device included artillery shells filled with gas, leaving terrible burns and agonizing deaths on both sides. Both sides used poison gas during the war. Once released and left to the wind, poison gas could strike anyone. Also invented, of course, was the gas mask shortly thereafter. The tank. The tank was used in World War I. It was first invented by the British, but eventually used by all sides. By the end of the war, both sides had produced more than 8,000 of these offensive weapons. Yet, tank warfare will only be in its infancy during this time. It's actually going to really mature in World War II. Planes and German Zeppelins were used during this time. Germany used Zeppelins. They were aircraft similar to a blimp. So you can see what a picture looks like right there. At first, both sides used planes only to monitor enemy troop movements. But they were soon equipped with bombs and machine guns to enable them to kill enemy troops and pilots. Zeppelins were used as long-distance flying machines that could bomb civilian areas in places as far away as England. Germans also used submarines to counter Britain's naval supremacy. If you've got the strongest navy in the world, how are you going to be attacked? Well, you're going to go under the water to attack them by surprise. German submarines will sink over 6,000 Allied ships. The British started using blimps to spot German submarines, and they developed depth charges to destroy them. But still, it was a difficult thing to do. Letter D. Propaganda and total war. Governments on both sides used every available form of media to maintain support for their sides while demonizing the enemy. Propaganda, in case you're wondering what that is, emphasized national pride and the atrocities committed by the enemy to mobilize civilian support. Propaganda made their own nation look just, and the atrocities attributed to the enemy could be real, exaggerated, or even false. The purpose of propaganda was to get the civilian population behind the war effort. Support us, it's the patriotic thing to do. It makes you a good citizen. Help the right side. In fact, religion was not excused from the war effort either. The term civil religion means using religion to promote the goals of the state. For World War I, many nations claimed it was the good Christian thing to support your country no matter what. Hopefully you can guess from my tone of voice, but is this an acceptable philosophy? Of course not. Why did they do all this? Why was propaganda used? Why was civil religion used? The answer? They were fighting a total war. This is a war in which all the resources of a country are devoted to destroying the enemy. In addition, total war brought the war to civilians. See, in the past, war usually involved two armies on opposite sides fighting a battle. The battle ends, and that's the end of it. That's warfare, historically speaking. But total war affected the civilians too. Civilians became targets in bombing raids and artillery fire. As the war progressed, food became scarce, and strikes became common among those who were suffering. Civilian deaths from attack, disease, and famine climbed into the millions. In your textbooks, please read the box on page 314 entitled Justice and Total War. Read that box yourself and then hit play again when you have finished reading. Welcome back. Let's conclude this war. We're not going into great details on this. I know we could spend a whole semester talking about the World War I, but guess what? This is not a college course. This is a 7th grade course, and so we will not spend too much more time on this war. Major turning points. Russian losses at the hand of the Germans led to the collapse of the Tsar government in Russia. The last Tsar, Nicholas II, stepped down in 1917, and the Communists took over in 1918. Communist Russia, led by Vladimir Lenin, signed a peace treaty and took itself out of the war. Recognize, you got to understand, Russia quit the war. Remember, they had been an allied nation, quit the war early. This freed the German forces to concentrate on the Western Front, possibly defeat the Allied forces. However, the Germans had angered the U.S., bringing America into the war for the Allies. So if you're still getting that list down of individual countries that fought in the war, we've got Serbia, we got Russia, we got France. Britain joined because of Belgium, and now the U.S. is joining the war for the Allies. The Germans had sunk some American ships. Also, the U.S. sought to maintain the balance of power in Europe, and at the request of President Woodrow Wilson, the U.S. declared war on April 6th, 1917. Just a couple days off from that anniversary date. As many as 250,000 Americans will arrive in France every month to help out in the war. The U.S. provided the Allies with the much-needed advantage and will help defeat the German forces to end the war. Letter F. Aftermath of the war. Have you guys done math class? Because this is aftermath. I know, good joke. The war had led to the deaths of millions and resulted in immense destruction of property. Representatives from the major nations came together to work out treaties. Because Germany had not been decisively defeated in battle, Germany had signed an armistice. That means a truce. They hoped they would be treated fairly. They would be mistaken. Number 1, the Paris Peace Conference. This included representatives from the Allies, but the Central Power nations, Germany, Austria-Hungary, the Ottoman Empire, and Russia would be excluded. Remember, Russia was excluded because it had withdrawn from the war early. So you can see, of course, on this famous photograph that's taken of the world leaders, we've got President Woodrow Wilson shown here. We've got the French leader, Clemenceau, pictured here. We've got Orlando. He was the Italian leader representing Italy and eventually joined the Allies during the war. And then Lloyd George, pictured here for Britain. The Treaty of Versailles contained harsh demands and blamed Germany for the war. Germany lost territory and its colonies was ordered to pay massive war debts to the Allied nations. Germany was also forced to reduce its military. Lastly today, tens of millions of soldiers and civilians died on both sides. Approximately 10 million soldiers died. About 26 million were wounded or missing in action. Civilian deaths equaled about the same number. In fact, if you want to do the math, make it more real to you with those big numbers, about 15,000 people died for each day of the war. Terrible. Also, the cost of the war exceeded $350 billion. Remember, this is billion World War I era money, not 2020 money. Some believe that the cost had been so great that no nation would ever go to war again. President Wilson and the others thought that this was the war to end all wars. Obviously, it was not called World War I during this time, but also the Great War, because they thought it really would end all wars. Tragically, again, they would be proven wrong within a few years. On page 315, there is a purple box entitled The Armenian Genocide. Please read that box to yourself. Once you have finished reading, you may press play. Welcome back. For your homework, I want you to draw a line in your notes, recognizing that that's as far as you need to go for your quiz. This is the Chapter 17 quiz that you have in your packet. So quizzes over Roman numerals 1 and 2. Make sure you do that. Also do pages 141 and 142 in your activities book. Page 141 and 142 in your activities book. The first one is a map, and the second one is a matching section, or World War I review. Hope you all have a good rest of the day. Be good, do good.